Welcome to the Leadercast podcast, a weekly deep dive into the stories that transformed our guests into leaders worth following. I'm your host, Joe Boyd. If you've been enjoying the podcast, thank you so much for being a listener. One simple thing you can do to help us out is to give a review on the app wherever you listen. Thanks. Welcome to the Leadercast podcast. Today's guest is Sunny Parr. She is the Director of Corporate Affairs for Ralph's and Food 4 Less, part of the Kroger company, one of the biggest companies in the world. And Sunny's story is unlike anyone I've ever met. You will hear how she grew up and was orphaned in Korea, was adopted here in the United States at the age of 5, had a passion for dance that led her to run her own dance studio, to ultimately move from coaching kids to coaching us grown-ups in corporate America. I think you're really going to love this discussion with Sunny Parr. Hi, Sunny Parr. Welcome to the Leadercast podcast.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited
Doing
to have
well.
you.
Doing well.
For those of you who don't know, we used to share a city in Cincinnati, and you left me. You moved away, so it's nice to see you.
Just a little far, just to the West Coast. A little city called LA. But I know you used to call that home. So I think
I did. We were
high-fiving in the night, and I'm just so appreciative that we are colliding again right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Really.
I'm so glad our paths crossed, and that we have here some time on our podcast to kind of dive into your story. So your story, I have to say, I have no category to put it in when I hear it. It's just so different than all of my other friends and business associates. Would you mind just telling us a little bit of the genesis of how your life started and as a little girl, what you were doing?
Yeah. So I am actually a Korean adoptee, and I was born out of wedlock in my biological mother's family is from North Korea, and my biological father's family is from South Korea. So, during the war, it really tore families apart. It helped that they were able to find each other. But they were unable to marry due to the caste system of the Asian culture. And my biological mother is a farmer and a minister of the Christian faith, actually, in the Seoul area, and really works as an activist. Her life dream and goal is to see a united Korea, which is just, when you think about North Korea, and I'm going to go down this path a little bit. When I think about North Korea, it may be one of the darkest places in the entire planet. When you think about when you think about the connection to your mother, your own mother, and, their experiences and how you're connected because of their experience and what makes you as a human being today. I have in my years as I've grown older, deeply grown to appreciate, kind of where my ancestry is from. Yeah. And I'm fully American. I was actually adopted at the age of 5. So a lot of times people ask me hey, Sunny, do you remember things? Yeah. And it's if you think back to when you were 5, Joe, you remember things. It's not just pictures or, things that you're people told you, but rather you have memories of your experience. So yes, Korean was my first language. I came over here with actually an open cleft palate, and my lip had been closed. And so, my adoptive parents were we don't just want a foreign adopted child to bring to suburban middle of Ohio,
right?
But we want someone with special needs. And we want to go on this journey with them to make sure that they have such an incredible life, that they are thriving in all the ways that we can help. And that's exactly what they did. They afforded me the ability to actually grow up as a dancer. I was a competitive dancer. So I was in the studio, 4 to 5 hours every night. That's my true passion. Sometimes people say, what's your passion? Passion is what you do for yourself. Purpose is what you do for others. And dance is my passion. And, when you think about kind of the latter part of your question, Joe, it's about, what were you like as a little girl or, et cetera. I think, gosh, that's when I learned I loved performing. and I loved live, and I loved the stage, because what happens live is just between you and the audience. And you can't relive that in any other moment, right? You can try to recreate those moments. You create those moments through television or media that's kind of curated, but live is just like, hey, we're here together and we're having this shared experience. So I think as a kid, I really learned that while my parents are being told, she may never be able to speak correctly, or she will probably never be able to sing or, perform. Yeah. I did all that. So I just think that that those are those moments that I smile when I think about the question. I'm like, oh, I was discovering my passion for dance and performing, and what an incredible blessing.
There's a lot there. I will make sure we get you out of here on time, but I had like 7 follow-up questions. So I definitely want to talk about the dance stuff. I'm sure we'll get back to that. Also, as you know, I have a performance background too. And so people ask what my favorite job I've ever had was, and I was in a Vegas show 6 nights a week doing improv comedy for 2.5 years. I did like 1,000 shows. It was the most ridiculous job ever. I just made it up every night for 3 hours, and I would have done it forever probably, except I think I made about $25,000 a year. So at some point I was like, I should probably make money. But there's that like, that really was like just the energy of every night. If you're a performer, it's hard to explain, because you're either a performer or you're terrified of it, right? So if you have it in you, there is nothing like it. It's kind of a transcendent mystery of how like live performance touches people, I think. But, you know us, we're drinking the same stuff. So but let's I know you had, like, for lack of a better word, kind of some trauma early on. Would you mind just sort of, I wonder how do you feel like, say your story compared to people you grew up around that had, quote unquote, a normal first 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Did you see early on as a child that some of the stuff that maybe you went through that either you remember or you don't, like, was with you was it always there? Was it something you had to overcome as you were growing up?
Oh, I think of it a little bit differently than the way you framed it. So I think of the first 2.5 years, my biological mother actually raised me. She was, her family name was kind of denounced in the community. And so she was forced to leave, or forced to, it sounds aggressive, but kill me. Like there's a decision that she had to make. And for me, she decided to escape the village and try to make it by living in a cave in a mountain, and started her ministry work to try to share the Christian faith. No matter what your belief is, this is my story. The Christian faith to those who were living in very rural areas of South Korea. And when I think about that, it's the Confucius culture that I think about during the first formative years of knowing love or not knowing love. I knew love. And so when I think about your question, and I'll get to some trauma, but when I think about those first 2.5, 3 years, I know I knew love. I knew I knew music. I knew hugs. I knew we were doing our best to survive. And it was a very Confucius culture that I reflect. That is in me. And I can't actively kind of say, like, this is how I was taught, Joe, but it is something that lives deeply within me. Actually, when she was teaching me songs in the cave, she recognized that with my cleft lip and palate being open, I was not able to kind of articulate. And she wanted kind of the best life forward for me. And she said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but you need medical help. So I'm going to go to the hospital. She was quite a driven woman. I'm going to go to the hospital and just say, what can I do? What are my options? Please, somebody educate me. And that day when she went to the hospital, she actually dropped me off with her mother, my biological grandmother, and her sister, my biological aunt. And it was that day that they decided that they were done. with the family name being tarnished in their community, and I needed to kind of disappear. It was not with her approval. It was without her even knowing. They took me to the mega city of Seoul in the middle of the city and actually dropped me in the middle of a park, which may sound a little harsh to Americans and the audience.
Sure.
But in Korea, that's okay, because in some ways they knew that I would be found. I would be found by someone, and I was found by someone. They actually took me to the nearest hospital, and I stayed with. I'm getting a little bit deeper than I had originally, Joe, but I stayed with the officer on site because somebody said, "This girl is lost. She won't tell me her name. I wouldn't talk to anyone, but someone might come and pick her up. Someone might have lost her." So can you watch her to make sure that if anybody's roaming around looking for a child, she's right here. So he stayed with me actually the entire day until his entire shift was over that night. And that night he actually took me to the police station and they sent me to the orphanage. I think it's the orphanage that felt that sense of, it's one of our greatest human fears is abandonment or loss.
Yeah.
And it's at that time, at about 3 years old, I've lost everything that I've ever known. And I know what a 3-year-old knows. And I was put into foster homes, probably about 3 or 4, before I settled into a children's home where there were about 10, say toddler age. So we were like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Boys and girls living together, sleeping on a floor. The boys use one toothbrush. The girls use one toothbrush. We ate rice and kimchi for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Wow.
Joe, I'm going to go back to my dance background. I distinctly remember from the time I was at that orphanage, between 3 and 5 years old, Korean fan dancing is part of the Korean culture. And some Korean fan dancers came. They had hanboks on. They looked absolutely beautiful. And they performed for us.
Is literal fans, kids. Is that what fan dancing is?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
And I remember that it was like changed my life. I was like, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. I have to do this. And I distinctly remember being like, I don't know what that is, but I want to learn. And it's beautiful and it makes me happy. And I think that's why some of the songs and the music and the dance that I learned, even throughout the orphanage in my early days, I brought with me. And that's like, as a 5-year-old, again, who arrived in the middle of suburbia, Ohio, not knowing anything really in regards to the language. I had been adopted into an adoptive family, so mixed family. My parents couldn't have any children of their own. So I had an older Caucasian sister and an older Caucasian brother, not of my parents and not biologically related themselves.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, immersed into this environment. And gosh, I don't look at it as abandonment trauma. Mm-hmm. I look at it as my human experience that helps shape how I look at the world, how I view the world, how I make decisions as a parent, as a professional, as a performer. Sometimes I don't see it as something that dampers who I am. I see it as a part of who I am, and I take that with me.
Thank you so much. You don't have to tell us everyone's story is their own, and it's a gift. And thank you for sharing it with us. Pretty much all the great wisdom traditions and religions, and they mostly all talk about how we are really mostly shaped and formed by our pain and our trials. And as we grow older, our own sort of self-induced failures. But it's those hard things that actually shape us and can sort of be or are almost always redeemed in the end somehow. So I think in a weird way, of everyone I know, you got through a lot of yours by age 3. You know what I mean? I'm sure you continue to obviously to have pain and trauma and failures, but It is in a strange way. What I hear you saying is it even though it sounds like it sounds to us that it was a gift in a way because it helped you become who you were. And anyone who knows you knows that's a gift for all of us. So thank you so much for sharing that.
I want to share something that I think could be a question on anyone who may have experienced some part of or be able to relate to any part of my story. I only know my story because my biological mother actually searched for me for 7 years after she had lost me. And was able to share my story with me. So I know that, a lot of people might be like, how does she know what happened at 1 to 5 or what the whole story is. And that's that bright light. Like that's that I go, why do I know? And what will I do with it? I'll share it when it feels right. And and with almost anyone, because it is important to be able to say, because you're going through something now, or because you can relate to some form of loss or abandonment, we're going to have, some kind of shared moment. And I do think it's really important to kind of share the fact that, like, I do know more than most who may have been abandoned in their life, only because throughout my adult life, I've been able to get to know my biological mother. She knows my son. She knows my husband. And it's just an incredible thing that you can't write in. It's happened to me, right? She found me and was able to share my story with me. So that's why I'm able to share what I do know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got to move on. I could talk about this forever, but you might get tired of it. So if we fast forward all the way to today, you're the director of corporate affairs for Ralph's and Food for Less. You've been with the Kroger company for a while, and I know you had a very significant job with the Kroger Foundation. That's what it's called, right? Kroger. What was your previous job?
Executive director of the Kroger Foundation and head of philanthropy.
Yeah. So obviously, let's try to put the pieces together a little bit from the girl that has the dream of being a fan dancer and gets and has that dream to be a performer, and you get to do that in various ways, and you get to teach people to dance as you go. And of course, somehow you end up in this very significant corporate job for one of the biggest companies in the world. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about how when you had that early passion, that early ambition for dance, how did that start to become a reality? When did how did you become an actual performer dancer? What's that story?
I think I'm still becoming the performer that I want to be. As far as dance, it was just something that I loved. And I started dancing in the kitchen. For anyone who dances, you understand that's the best place to dance. Grocery store is also a great place if you haven't tried that. But it's the expression through performance. So it's like the artistic elements. And then when you put dance with it, it's so physical. And so I think for me, it paired art and physical together in a way that made me just fall in love with, again, that live connection, to bring you into what is the stage, right? And the curtains. The goal as a performer is to bring you, the audience, into us and to have this experience and to be able to do that through movement. Just absolutely fascinating. And I love it. I love how every human body moves. I think it is unique. It's different. I know we show up in the media and people say your body should look like this, males, and your body should look like this, females, and your body should look like this for those who are using other pronouns and comfortable, kind of on their own journey. But it's like, no, actually everybody's body is so different. And through dance, when you get to share your story or a statement or just in entertainment, enjoyment through art, that is just absolutely phenomenal. I actually owned a dance studio. So as an entrepreneur for a decade, I was teaching competitive dance for students ages, all school age, actually, kind of 5 to 18. And just in that experience, Joe, I became passionate about mentorship and coaching youth, and seeing that youth needed other mentors outside of their four walls of their home.
Yeah.
And the dance, any sport, right? And that training brings that to life.
And would it be fair to say, I have no experience with competitive dancing, but it strikes me as one of those youth activities that could be like potentially sort of, I don't know, you could be too demanding with them, or the parents living out the kids' dreams and all that. So as a mentor, did you find yourself balancing sort of the importance of it versus shaping the sort of individual as a person? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think in my own experience, so I grew up in the 90s, and it was the stick figure ballerina, right? So
Yeah.
you talk about kind of some of the eating disorders that were always a part of my vernacular.
Yeah.
The pop culture growth of, and I'm going to call it growth on purpose,
Yeah.
of women, and their presence, and tropes of diva, and kind of that growing. I think, and just kind of like I don't want to say like a hard-handed culture of like, Sonny, get your leg up there, just do it. And it was very much like, this is what it looks like, and now do it, regardless of if your body is experiencing pain or if it doesn't work for your body. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like, just do it.
Just do it.
And so when I transitioned into kind of the coaching mentorship role, from that experience, from my own experience, I learned that's not how you coach humans to be successful in life. And actually, maybe none of my dancers will become dancers, but we're here in this moment together, and they'll become incredible time management. And I can go all day on the benefits of dance education, but self-confidence, the ability to stand up and not only dance, but speak, and, be able to stand up for friends, peers, just that confidence in the way you show up is how I see dancers. And when I train dancers, they were trained to take care of their bodies, to learn their bodies, to learn the limits of their bodies, but also learn how to push the limits of their bodies. And I hopefully a safe format. And you can do some research later to make sure that that's actually true. But that's how I coach, because of my own experiences in training, and how I felt the future leaders who were dancing with me at that time needed to approach the world.
Yeah. I'm curious about, there are probably a ton of folks that listen and watch this podcast that have something that they grew up with, like dance, that is important to them, and I assume that you thought you would do it somewhat vocationally, right? As you were growing up, did you assume dance would be part of your job, or no, you didn't?
No.
I feel like a lot of us do. Like when I knew I wanted to be a performer, all I could imagine was doing it for a living. That was my goal. And of course, the process, you find out sometimes it's even better if you don't do it for a living. But I'm just curious, like, if you have any general advice to folks that maybe find themselves at a job that maybe they like and they're pretty good at, but that voice in your head that says, "Bob, but I always wanted to do this other thing." Do you have advice around that sort of mindset?
I don't. I feel like I came into dance as a profession. Like I said, an entrepreneurship role. Never because I said, Joe, I'm going to own a dance studio someday, and I'm going to teach, tens of thousands of students in this incredible art form and sport that I love. That was kind of not on my radar at all, and I did it for a decade. So I feel like, okay, let me go to kind of like the schoolgirl in me, because we're kind of reflecting on, what's brought us here. I definitely had this dream of like becoming a backup dancer for Janet Jackson. That was like and I don't tell people this, in normal, but I was like, oh yeah, that would be like I think I made it as a dancer moment.
Right.
But it was never like, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to take classes. It's funny that you say that now, because I say, we just shared that I now live in LA from being in Ohio for
Mhm.
most of my life, from 5 to
Mhm.
40, actually. And if you think about getting back to it, or that voice that you mentioned, I
Mhm.
have that now. I'm like,
Mhm.
I should go to the Millennium and go take a dance class and
Yeah.
look like an old person, pretending to be young and still able to move my body in the way that I hope or wish that I can. And I know that's completely false, but I haven't done that yet. But it's still there where I'm like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to do that. Just some
Yeah.
Saturday, I'm going to wake up. And it's because I think I can't. I know my limits.
Yeah.
um, but my gosh, won't that be good food for my soul? And I know it will. So I think there's
Yeah.
still like that aspect of me eating. Um, why don't you just do this right now? Why don't you try this? And I will share with you that is the opening that led me to owning a dance studio. I had taken an adult class when I moved down to Cincinnati for law school. I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
kind of miss dance. And I took an adult class, and it was that instructor that said, are you a dancer? And I was like, oh, no, like, you know, retired or whatever.
Yeah.
um, and not having actually done it for a profession, but that opened the door to the conversation of you should open up a dance studio. You should teach others. And
Yeah.
I had never really thought about it. And it was really the people around me that kept saying, Sonny, you could do that. Sonny, you'd be really great at that.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of built up to this moment where I was like, well, yeah, I guess I could do that. I'm only 21 years old, but okay.
Yeah.
Everyone believes me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what set off on that. It was never like that's what I wanted to do with
Yeah.
my business degree or anything like that, or my law degree or anything like that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is always true. I tend to think that sometimes our passion, if we give into it, shows us where to be, but not
Mhm.
always what to do.
I love that.
So, um, I think of like the early years of American Idol when they now American Idol now is actually quite like a sweet show. But early on, it
Mhm.
was all about people that couldn't sing and making fun of them, and they thought they were
That's
good singers. You know what I
right.
mean? But
It's good
like
entertainment.
I always think of people like that. If you just love to sing that much, but you're that bad at singing, you might want to try to get into the music industry doing something else because obviously you're passionate about that and it draws you in. And I saw that when I was a professional actor in LA that almost every single makeup artist I had before I would do anything would tell me I came to LA to be a screenwriter or to be an actress or to be a whatever. And they're like, I love this now, but I just had to work in the industry and this is what I was best at. And I do think following our passion kind of gets us in the right sort of orbit. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
love that framing. I love it.
Um, cool. Well, I want to get to how did you end up in corporate America
Yeah.
from owning a successful dance studio, and ultimately would love to learn how do you feel like you approached being a leader in a corporate context with your unique background as a dance coach and entrepreneur. So tell us how in the world, what happened? What went down?
I love these questions. Yeah. Um, my husband and I ran the dance studio together. And anyone who's an entrepreneur and anyone who runs their own business knows that it takes not just you, and even if you're the face of that business,
Yeah.
it takes your home to be along the journey with you, right? And it's like they're your partner. And my husband was definitely my partner. He was the janitor. He was the bouncer. He was the um, he was the front desk on the days he would come from after school. And but that wasn't his dream. And I very much appreciated, our life together and the flexibility that we traveled the world and, we
Yeah.
got to make our own schedule. But it was at home, a conversation that I said, well, what is it you want to do? And he's a high school educator. And he
Uh,
said, well, I'd love to coach like sports in
yeah.
high school. Like, I think I would love that. Varsity golf, varsity tennis, etc. And I was like, okay, well, you need to do that. And so like I've hugged, I've taken, but not on purpose, right? We were on the journey together. I've taken
Yeah.
a lot of time and you have supported me
Yeah.
in something that I've loved. And so I said, you know what? We got to give, our relationship is built on each other's success. So we actually sold the dance studio, and he became actually a high school varsity golf and tennis coach the next year. And it was at a retirement party, actually, for a friend, that somebody said, "Why are you not in corporate America? Because you got degrees and these things and whatever." Yeah. And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna hate corporate America, and they're probably gonna hate me." Um, and they said, "Well, just take a call." I literally that week had a call with somebody in the finance department at Kroger.
Yeah.
That week, and I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll just come in part time." We started a family too, by the way, during that time, because that's also what you do when you kind of reflect and say, what is it that you want in your life, we want in our life, and how do we make that happen? Because we're the ones in control. So, if we're going to say yes to something, or if we desire for something, like, let's make the plan to figure out how it happens for us. It's obviously not going to be the plan you write out. It's going to change, but let's make that plan and go after it together. So that's how I stepped in, part-time, contract, fell in love with this team. And it's actually the VP of that team, I think, that was a huge mentor in my life, who I'm just kind of doing process improvement work in a corporate finance department. I'm super prego, super pregnant. And I'm going, what do I do now? How exciting is that, by the way?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to sit behind a desk.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. I struggle with it every day. And you asked a little bit, Joe, for me to share my experience and how I approach my role today. And I reflect on that quite often. And I'm going to share the fact that being a mom of a grade schooler, being a professional woman in corporate America, where in every industry, whatever the one job was, kind of like 10, 20 years ago, has now become the 8 jobs that you oversee, right? Everything has been condensed. So the pressures of all the things pulling at you as a professional are hard. They're hard every single day. And I think it's easy to be like, well, prioritize or do whatever your boss is asking you, because if your boss is happy, then you're going to get promoted and things like that. I think I approach the world, my professional world, based on my personal experience, by treating all requests, all people, almost exactly the same. And for me, it's making sure that I dedicate the time to my team, whether it is my direct reports, my expanded colleague teams, because we're all doing the same work together, or those who I report to, with the same energy, with the same, because that's how I've learned through my experience, and that's how I approach my role now. But I want to kind of go back to my thoughts on being a woman of color, being a professional, being a mom, being a wife, being a daughter, all the things that we are. And you'll fill those in with the things that, the list that you are.
Yeah.
It does feel impossible some days. And I do feel like with all the balls in the air, I'm less than adequate, or I like to use the word suck, which may not be the best.
Sometimes the best.
I'm definitely sucking at something today, but let's try not to be less than adequate at all the things. And I have a hard time, I think, with my experience, Joe. This is where I was going. Given my experience, given my past, you can call it stop and smell the roses, or take a moment to appreciate something that was a win today. I struggle with that immensely. I will take a win and I will say, okay, the 18 ways it could have been better. And I'm like, okay, next time. And I'm already focused on the next time we're doing it and how the 18 ways that we think it can be better can be integrated into that. Call it drive, call it crazy. It's all that. And I think for me, the experience I bring is that uh, I'm still working on me and how I can best and better appreciate those daily wins, those small wins. I'm not good at it. I'm actually really bad at it. Even I think a conversation with my boss the other day, driving in the car, driving in LA traffic. Yes. She definitely was like, you need to stop. Like, you need to like say like, that was a kick-ass moment. Yeah. You're 3 months into, a brand new reload, brand new role. Just stop. I was like, oh, you're right. And I had a hard time talking to myself, the internal dialogue, saying that it was good and it took 15 people to make it good. And it's not, you that made it good. And I'm doing it right now. I don't have enough appreciation for some of the great things that happen.
What I love just watching you talk is the inner struggles of what's going to make you ultimately overcome it. Like, there's so many people that are that way and they don't care, but you have that in, once you diagnose what you got to deal with, you won't get it out of your head. And these are deep rooted things that look, mine's not exactly like that, but we all have them. And talking about them in a public format, you may have lost track that thousands of people are going to hear this, but just being open to just say, this is what I'm dealing with is it's so you're going to figure it out. It might take you a while. We're out of time, but I love you so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I always end, one thing, can you say the first name of your mentor? Is that okay?
Yeah, Scott.
So one thing I just wanted to pull out is, like, in a corporate world, when you have an all-star, like he was basically saying you're an all-star, right? Mm-hmm. Who works for him, because you kind of make his life easier. It is a huge sign of a mentor who would go to them and say, I'm willing to risk you on my team because I see more for you somewhere else. I just wanted to pull that out because I think we can get very possessive with our folks that we know are doing a good job for us. And especially in a big corporate world. So that's a huge, like, gold star in Scott's page for me. But we tried in with one fun question. So here we go. I want to know the 3 songs that if you hear, you must dance to.
Oh my gosh. Can I just have one?
Sure. I will allow
Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston.
Well, it's right there in the song.
That's the one.
You just have to. You have to. In the grocery store,
I have to.
Off you go.
Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. Yes.
I'm going to pay someone to follow you around and play that song nonstop the rest of the week, just to wear you out. Sonny Parr, you're the best. Thank you so much. We will talk to you again soon. Thank you.